Hey y'all, welcome to Soccer for Us. Thanks for joining me on this episode as we react to the USA's 7-0 win over Trinidad and Tobago on January 31st from Exploria Stadium in Orlando, Florida. Now, go ahead and subscribe to Soccer Down Here on whatever podcatcher you're listening to this episode on right now. That is if you haven't already. By subscribing, not only will you get every episode of Soccer for Us, you will also get the daily Soccer Down Here show and the other fine content that is produced by the SDH Network. Also, make sure to follow at Soccer for Us Pod on Twitter. I'd love for you to tweet me with your takes and reactions to news and other updates that happen in the world of American soccer. So go ahead and follow at Soccer for Us Pod on Twitter. Today, we're talking about the USMNT's 7-0 win over Trinidad and Tobago with my good friend Zach Berly. And then I'll discuss the action of transfer deadline day with the prolific soccer writer Sydney Hunte. So let's get started. Trinidad are not in a good place right now. It was talked about on the FS1 match. We talked about it in the preview show. They hadn't played anyway, an international match for 13 months. Their professional leagues in Trinidad have been shut down since March. It's not a great spot for the Trinidadian FA right now, and part of that is because, well, they've been on and off probation for the past couple years thanks to corruption. And kind of the bow on top of all of this is that they hired a new manager in 2019, Terry Finnick, and he hasn't even been able to get his club, his squad together to train or manage a game. They're just not fit, they're not prepared, they're not in a position to really be competitive at the international level. That said, it's still a 7-0 win. You gotta love that if you're a US fan. Both of these squads were incredibly young. Coach Finnick mentioned that he wanted to play a young squad, and Berhalter as well, being very deliberate, taking a bunch of Olympic-eligible players into this game and putting them into the starting 11. So let's look at the US's starting 11. In goal, you had Matt Turner making his first ever start and first appearance for the national team. Aaron Herrera, same, first start, first appearance at right back. Miles Robinson in his first start at center back alongside of the veteran and captain Aaron Long. And then the youngster Sam Vines at left back. In the midfield, a very experienced trio of Jackson Ewell, Kellen Acosta, and Sebastian Lletget. And then up top, you had Paul Arriola, the right winger. And in the middle, you had Jesus Ferreira. And out left, you had Jonathan Lewis. Now, I'll say that I was not super happy that Lewis and Ferreira started. But they proved me wrong. And I'm very happy they did because I'm always happy when players perform well for the red, white, and blue. Let's run down the timeline of events in the game. It was a fairly eventful game because there were 7 goals. And that started in the second minute. Jonathan Lewis gets his goal on the assist from Jesus Ferreira, the first international goal for Jonathan Lewis. It comes really off of a curved through ball that Sam Vines plays behind the Trinidadian defense onto a run from Ferreira. Kind of gets into a battle for the ball for right inside of the penalty area with Trinidad goalkeeper Fonset, but Ferreira evades him, dribbles a little bit away from goal, and then cuts it back to Lewis, who finishes for the 1-0 lead. 9th minute rolls around. Jesus Ferreira now gets his own goal on the assist from Sam Vines. The two Colorado teammates, Vines and Lewis, combined to unlock the Trinidad defense on that left side. Pass through the defense right to the goal line that Sam Vines takes, crosses it from the goal line to Ferreira, who coolly finishes to make it 2-0. 22nd minute now, Paul Arriola on the assist from Jesus Ferreira. Arriola coming through on a late run as Ferreira rounds the keeper. He kind of cuts the keeper and makes him look kind of foolish, to be honest. Cuts the keeper, does Ferreira, and then just lays it off for Arriola, who has had harder finishes in his lifetime, that's for sure. And that's now 3-0 to the U.S. 41st minute, Paul Arriola again on the assist from Jesus Ferreira. This time a little bit more of a complicated goal. Ferreira, after Trinidad kind of headed the ball up in the air, Ferreira heads it straight into the path of Arriola, who runs on into the box, takes a cut to his left, and then taking a shot from his left foot back across goal to the right corner, does find the net after the goalkeeper does get a touch on it, but a very good finish from Areola to make it 4-0 for the United States. And at halftime, that was your score, 4-0. Coming out of the half, Greg Berhalter made one change. That was Andres Perea coming on for Sebastian Lletget. He played a whole 45 minutes. I'll talk with Zach a little bit more about this, but because I do want his insight on Perea as someone who follows Orlando City. Perea was fine. He maybe looked a little too overzealous and also a little too simple at times, but for his first ever match for the United States men's national team, I think what he did was perfectly okay. He did get himself to a little bit of trouble later on this match, though. So 52nd minute, we start scoring again. Miles Robinson on the assist from Aaron Long. It was a free kick taken by Kellen Acosta. He whips it to the back post where Aaron Long, who kind of just quietly slid behind all the defenders and right into the penalty, into the goal area, right into the 6-yard box. On the far edge of that, heads it back across the goal. And Miles Robinson, who had darted toward the front post, stopped his run, curled back in. Great design of the set piece. And Miles Robinson is there to dive and head the ball home. 5-0 United States. Make it 6-0 just a couple of minutes later in the 55th minute as Jonathan Lewis takes the ball from Kellen Acosta out left, takes a touch, does a move, brings it back inside onto his right foot, and from the left corner of the penalty area, curls that ball all the way to the far right corner of the goal around the goalkeeper and makes it a 6-0 lead for the United States. And then finally, in the 62nd minute, we get our final goal of the match. Jesus Ferreira on the assist from Paul Areola. 7-0 is your final score. It wasn't the final action, but it was the final time the United States scored. Right after that, we sub in a bunch of players. 4 guys come on. George Bello, Chris Mueller, Christian Roldan, and Daryl Dike come on for Sam Vines, Paul Areola, Jackson Ewell, and Jesus Ferreira. So 4 players come on. At this point, that's 5 subs used, so a pretty different, team out there on the field for the U.S. And shortly thereafter, 65th minute, there is a foul conceded by Andres Perea right at the top of the box. Nothing like super bad. It was just a kind of an example of being overzealous. Ball kind of goes over his head as Ryan Telfer runs into the box, and Perea sticks his leg out kind of high, trying to win the ball in the air. Doesn't really sense that Telfer is running through and catches Telfer for the foul. It is taken by Alvin Jones, and this penalty take was not very good. Jones puts it kind of, from his vantage point, middle left of the goal on the ground. But Matt Turner makes a great save here, I will say. He reads the kick very well. He says, okay, you're going to the right. He gets a good jump. He gets his big paw down there and really is able to make a good save. And in his first ever appearance for the United States, he's got a penalty kick save. Pretty good showing for him. Then in the 78th minute, Tanner Tessman comes on. Not a whole lot to say after that. Tanner Tessman subbing on. You got to see, if you watched the FS1 broadcast, his godfather, Dabo Swinney, the head coach of Clemson football team, in the stands. They're very just beaming with joy to see his godson make an appearance at the highest level possible, really. It's really cool. I know that, this is godson, he's there to support, but I still think it's pretty cool that a major college football coach is in Orlando, Florida on a random Sunday in January to watch his godson play soccer. That's just cool. Overall, U.S. wins 7-0. There's some things you can take from it. We'll talk about that in the next segment, but I'm just happy that we won. We scored the goals, and there's not much negative you can say about it. Let's just put it that way. There are a few performances that were really good. There were some performances that were uninspiring, but on the whole, you take the win, you use it as a confidence builder, and you turn the page. Now you look at March, where you will have Olympic qualifying tournament and probably a FIFA international friendly or two. Yeah, that's a recap of the USA's 7-0 win over Trinidad. Now, let's go talk to Zach Berly, who will join me in this next segment here on Soccer for Us. Today's show is sponsored by Goodfellas Technology. Goodfellas will build you a digital storefront and custom WordPress theme to help you meet your customers where they shop, online. Goodfellas will do the work to get your site set up and make it easy for you to manage your new e-commerce site. They'll even update your site as your business grows. Check out goodfellastech.com to build your e-commerce site today. All right, I am excited to bring on the first ever guest here on Soccer for Us to help me kind of make sense of the 7-0 win over Trinidad. He is the voice of Campbell University soccer. It's Zach Berly. Zach, thank you so much for being here and chatting with me today.
Thank you for having me on, Bart. There's nothing I like to talk more about than when our U.S. men's national team wins a game.
Well, we've had a couple of those big wins recently. We finally look like we are consistently producing goals. The 7-0 win, I know it's Trinidad. They're not very good right now, but just from the top, what was your initial reaction?
Well, the very first thing that popped in my mind was, where was this in 2017? It really makes you wonder. But I think the biggest thing is I thought less of, this is Trinidad and Tobago. Let's tamper our expectations. And I really thought more of it from the U.S. perspective, in that this is not the starting lineup. These are some kids that aren't going to really be featuring for the national team for at least a little while, even though they very well could. These kids are going to be, a good number of them, off at the Olympic qualifiers, which gave me a lot of hope and made me really look forward to seeing them in qualifying and then actually at the Olympics. So I was thinking a bit about the U.S. men's national team, but more about the future because, we got to see some old faces and some faces we've seen before, like Leggett and Yule, but some of the new kids that I hadn't seen yet, and then a couple of them I had never known before, and have done a lot of looking into since, has really impressed me.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, that from looking at the senior national team, it's hard to judge anything for this game. But that Olympic qualifying, we haven't done it since 2008. Which was, of all the things you could kind of really criticize the Jurgen Klinsmann administration for, was that we, in 2 tries, they never qualified for the Olympics. And it's important to do that. And you got to look at the guys on the field and think, man, they might be able to get it done. I'm very confident that they can. I want to talk about a couple of those guys that I think you might know a little bit better than most. First one up is Andres Perea. He didn't start, but he comes on into the second half. Transferring from Colombia to the United States, an Orlando City player, very good midfielder for Orlando City, I would say. What was your thoughts on how he played in the match on Sunday?
Yeah, we're kind of switching from the players who are going to be more on the Olympic side to then we got in some of those subs who might actually be featuring like in the near future for the U.S. And Perea hopefully will be one of those. And when I heard that he was going to be competing for the U.S., I was really excited because he's a player that I think that we could use on the men's national team, looking past the Michael Bradley era and what we're going to be looking at going forward, whether it's going to be more creative mids like Reyna, and then if Pulisic drifts inside, or who's going to, post, I guess you could say even post Will Trapp era now, but I'm not so sure how solid his role is. I think that if you're looking for an option that's not going to be one of the big names in Europe, whether that's not Adams or McKinney or whoever it is, I think that Perea is solid. I think he played solid in the game against Trinidad and Tobago. I think that we're going to see a lot more of him in that holding midfield role, but he's also got a creative bit about him that I think gets to be shown more at this level, being that he's going to be surrounded by some very good attacking players, hopefully in the future. He didn't really get a whole lot of time on the field with the scoring side of the team, so we didn't get to quite see some of his creative abilities. But I think that in the future, he's going to kind of provide that balance. Not the same role as a Will Trapp or a Michael Bradley because he's a bit more defensive, but I think that he has an opportunity to plug the gaps, especially in some of those tournaments where maybe we're not fielding Adams or McKinney.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like, there's only one Tyler Adams. So, someone has to either fill in when he's not starting or, give him a break every now and then. I especially look at Perea as someone who, when we get into World Cup qualifying, we're going to have a couple of windows. Actually, I think we'll have like 5 windows that have 3 matches each. And you can't put Tyler Adams out there for 90 minutes, all 3 matches. So I am encouraged that Perea can potentially be that kind of holding midfielder role, especially against teams in CONCACAF who aren't that great. The other guy I want to ask you about, obviously, is Daryl Dike. He makes his first appearance for the men's national team. Obviously, a guy who could play for the Olympic squad, is definitely playing a position where the United States needs an answer quickly. He's a striker who banged in a lot of goals for Orlando City this past season. Didn't look like he had his best game on Sunday, but he also didn't have a whole lot of opportunities. What could you make out of his showing on Sunday?
Yeah, if there was anything to be disappointed about with the Trinidad and Tobago game, it was that the second half team, not really in the second half, but that second team that came in didn't perform as well as the first. Just, it would really been crazy to have like a 12-0 scoreline, but we would have liked to at least seen some goals when those guys got on the field, and that includes DK. And I mean, he's just a monster of a player. He's got the next level, I think, of vision inside that box. He has not only the physicality, but just the sheer brain power to match it. He's crafty. Having seen him play in college and then do so well so quickly at Orlando, I thought he was going to be, second or third string, but he's picked up, and of course now off on loan, possibly as a final move off to Barnsley. But I think that in this game, as you said, not exactly what we wanted to see, but once again, comparing it to the U.S. men's national team of old, Josie Altidore is not going to be in the speaking for a long time, but you can almost sub in him exactly the same, and I have a lot of hype around DK, so I'm not going to say this with absolute certainty, but I really think he could surpass Altidore's abilities as that central forward player. And whether that's because of injuries or because of moves, he's starting with a fresh slate, and Josie had some hard time throughout his career. But if he gets a real run at it, I mean, he could really be a game changer for the U.S. And there's still a long road ahead of him. He's not quite paved forward like Christian Pulisic and the other guys who are at big name clubs, but I would love to see a guy like him playing in the championship, maybe like the Premier League one day, maybe not for a Chelsea or a Dortmund or a Champions League club, but a guy like that can be brought into the team and is going to offer different abilities than a Josh Sargent or something like that. Yeah. So I have a lot of hype around that guy, and I can't wait to see what he can do.
Yeah, I mean, the Daryl DK hype was very real. Started kind of in that MLS is Back tournament and continued throughout the 2020 season. I think if you're Orlando, you have to think that this is a guy who could make your club a lot of money in the very near future. Certainly the loan to Barnsley, which I will talk about in the next segment, but that loan to Barnsley is the start of that. So I'm with you. I think that DK could absolutely be the guy who turns into the starting striker for the national team for, a couple of cycles, but not his best performance. But hey, look, it's hard to judge anyone, and it's hard to judge anyone once you've come in with a whole new set of players in the second half. Moving on to some other players, I personally really liked Sam Vines. I thought that this was the second match in a row where he impressed me personally, looked really good in the attack. Don't know what you can say much about defensively because he didn't really do a whole lot of that. There wasn't a lot to defend. But he was pretty good passing from that left back role and combining with Leggett and Lewis. Did he kind of maybe get his name on a full senior national team spot, or is he still like solidly the Olympic guy?
I mean, I hope he gets some more runs. I mean, and we'll see with the schedule that we have for this upcoming year exactly what Greg Berhalter is thinking as far as pulling guys from Europe. And I don't know if travel and other competitions is going to have stuff to do with that with COVID and everything, whether he's thinking of that. So we could see more of Vines. But I said that it was a good night for the U.S. men's national team. It was a good night for the Colorado Rapids. It was a good night for FC Dallas. We got to see a lot of players that have come up through their ranks, and Sam Vines was one of them. I think it was the first goal that he set up with like an outside of the boot pass into the box. Beautiful. It was like a secondary assist, I think, but it was lovely. And I noticed looking at the lineup that back three is in the two center backs and the goalkeeper were familiar players. And then on the wings, the wing backs, we had unfamiliar, relatively guys that we hadn't seen a whole lot in the U.S. men's national team side. So I was looking for those, especially with the way Greg Berhalter plays, and I was blown away with both of them. Vines, I think maybe it was the third or fourth goal. I lose track of which one was which. He had a bombing run forward, overlapping where he kind of got in behind. So he's not going to have the same abilities going forward when we play other teams because he's going to be pinned back more. That'll be the real test. But at least we know going forward, if this team does want to be attacking, when we're adding in some bigger pieces, that we have some options, especially younger ones out wide that can do the job going forward. And I look forward to getting a good test of him. I hope that, he has a good Olympics and everything like that, but to see him back against us a better competition, because that'll be the real test.
Yeah, this is the second January camp Vines has been a part of, but both January camps last year in 2020, the goal and everything was still the same, where it was like, we're going to prepare for the Olympics. And then, the Olympic qualifications were postponed. So definitely seems to be the guy who at that left back position can help the Olympic squad. And I'm very anxious to see more of him because I don't want to be disappointed, but I'm very eager to see him in that Olympic qualification tournament. Look, we'll go straight to his teammate. You mentioned the Colorado Rapids. Jonathan Lewis, I personally was a little confused why he was in the starting lineup, and man, did he make me look stupid.
Yeah, that whole front three, if it would have been the other way around, if DK would have started and rolled on and those guys, and it would have been 7-0, and you'd have swapped it. If that's how it would have played out, you'd have believed it totally. You'd have believed 7-0. But then to go it the other way around, to have such a good performance, and we know it's Trinidad and Tobago, but these guys haven't got a lot of minutes together, a lot of minutes in this type of area, with the men's national team. They all kind of play in the same league, those young batches of FC Dallas and Colorado Rapids players. So they've seen each other, but so many odd factors coming into this. And then it combines in such a great performance. And I think Jonathan Lewis was like the epitome of that. Great wing play, good cutting inside. I thought he interacted well with Ferreira, the center forward, and some good overlapping runs working with, the wing back. So I was pleasantly surprised by, I guess the expectations were low, but not in the normal way coming into this. Normally I'm like, man, we're going to have a tough time. But the expectations were low because I don't want to hype up the young kids because we have so many already that I'm so hyped up about. So Jonathan Lewis was probably the one out of all of them, maybe besides some of the subs that I was the least familiar with. And so when he went off, I was very surprised, but pleasantly surprised. So we'll see how he fits in because, as we know, we have a plethora of attacking forces on the wings. Yep. So I hope he doesn't get lost on that jumble.
Yeah, that's kind of been my take about Lewis is that, I've known about him and been excited about the possibility, but then you look at him and just say, okay, well, where do you fit in? Because what is he going to replace? Pulisic? Is he going to replace Morris? Is he replacing, Conrad or Ulysses Yanez or even a Gio Reyna if you want to put him on the left wing? There's so many guys who could play a winger position, and you're like, well, where does Jonathan Lewis fit in? I think more than anything, this is just a representation of the Berhalter system finally starting to come together. I mean, over the past, I'll even go to last Costa Rica friendly, the past 4 friendlies against CONCACAF competition, we've outscored them 20-2. And that sounds weird to say that as a new revelation, but we haven't seen the U.S. really put the other lower CONCACAF teams to the throttle and really, just dismember them. I mean, this Trinidad and the El Salvador matches were they look bad. They were set up poorly. They are bad, but we still did the job and scored a bunch of goals against them. So I'm wondering if you're finally seeing the Berhalter system start to actually make sense to these players.
Yeah, and we haven't really had it's been since Klinsmann, so we haven't really got to see a coach get full time. Bruce Arena was kind of just there as a filler sort of thing, and then when Greg comes in, it's been kind of funky with not having a lot of competitions to play again post World Cup, and then a year off basically with COVID. So now that because of course he got to play with the players, just not really in any competitive games. So maybe that year where we're not under the pressure of having to be in a qualifier or something like that, maybe that gave him some time to really refine what he was trying to work on. And we can now, I think, really start to compare this era to the Jurgen Klinsmann era and those of the past, where we can start to say, okay, look, we had a fully formed squad with Klinsmann. What does that look like in comparison? Was this the right way to go? This change into American youth or the MLS route that kind of Bruce Arena started. So I think that we're going to be able to make these comparisons now. And, I was skeptical with Berhalter coming in the beginning. But if it was going to be anybody from his background, I think it was good to be him. And I think that, I haven't quite seen enough of the whole squad together yet, which I know everyone is relishing, everyone, all of the Europeans together. But when that happens, I think we can finally kind of put the stamp on Greg and say, seal of approval or not, because, we haven't seen everything together yet, but you see the vision, and that's pretty much all we can give to him right now is at least you're trying.
Yeah, that's a very fair point. I mean, he had the 2019 year where you had Gold Cup and Nations League, but that was the very first year that he had really had the team together. And I think it's very clear that he definitely picked players he was comfortable with. And now he's able to experiment with more players, bring more players in. You talk about playing better competition. You want to talk about playing with better players. That Wales friendly, you could point to say, oh, well, that wasn't really a good showing. That was the first match that we had played as a group, since COVID. I think it was unfair to expect much of anything. But you did see the better players in the pool play under Berhalter, but still, we've never seen a true a first choice squad. And I hope we see that in March when we have an international window. But even then, I don't know if you could say that, because you'll have some guys at Olympic qualification who might be in that first choice squad if their clubs let them go. I don't know. I'm with you. I'm not ready to say we're here, we got it. But until we see that first choice squad fully come together against a decent opponent, I'll be very satisfied at that point to be able to make, I don't know, some sort of a judgment. And then the last player I want to talk about, because I think this fits into this narrative of first choice, is Matt Turner. There was a little bit of weird Twitter drama with Matt Turner somehow should be the starting keeper of the United States. I'm not. I mean, I think he's fine. I think he's on the one of the three you bring to a tournament. But he saved a penalty. That's about all you can say. Anything else you want to say about Matt Turner and the drama of who's the number one for the United States?
I was hoping you were going to ask. I was going to have to ask you if you didn't, because everyone was talking about it post game, and I don't think you can really draw much from this match and say yes, Matt Turner should or should not be. He saves a penalty. That's great, but you're not going to start a goalkeeper just because he can save one single penalty. I think if you look at his body of work though from the time with the Revs, I think that he is a good goalkeeper. I think he should be in the discussion for the starting position, and I think that when we get everyone together, when it's Ethan Horvath, I think should be given a shout.
Yes.
I think he's a little bit underrated just from his time, at a minor major team in Europe. And then Stefan, of course, is going to be in there as well. So I think when you get those three together, and I might be missing one, but when you get those three together to give them a run, whether it's in the next camp or the one after that, to really be able to show off, one of them a game or something like that. And see, and plus we're going to miss a lot of the behind the scenes stuff in the actual camp, in the training. I trust Greg and I trust the coaches to be able to evaluate those guys. So we'll see who comes out on top, but I do not want people to just write off Matt Turner for being, the Revolution goalkeeper and that stuff, because he has a great record in the MLS, and I know it's different, and I know he's not playing for Manchester City and he's not saving shots from Sergio Aguero every afternoon in the training pitch, but still he should be given a shout, and I don't think it's that outlandish to assume that he could be featuring in goal for us more often.
Yeah, I will say this. I think Matt Turner is the number one American goalkeeper in MLS. I think that is fair. If we've had a long tradition of having great American goalkeepers, I think Turner follows in that, but sure, he's the best American goalkeeper in MLS. That's great. Cool. That's a great title to have. He's definitely one of the three keepers I'm bringing to something, be it a Gold Cup, be it World Cup qualifying. He's coming on the trip. Any other thoughts you had about this Trinidad match?
I think all in all, we can just kind of wash our hands and be, satisfied with the way that things have started off. Last year did not give us a lot of hope, regardless of whether it was sports or not. But I do think that we can look forward and say that, all of our nerves are going to be a little bit building as we get closer and closer to qualifying for the World Cup and what it's going to mean and everything. I think we just have to worry about the product and, the games will, I don't want to sound like a coach here, but worry about what's on the field and the results will come. And that's all we can do. I am not one of those people who will turn on Greg the first time we lose to Costa Rica or something like that. That first game comes up or, something weird happens in CONCACAF, because just because we've beaten these teams in friendlies doesn't mean that sort of stuff that we're very familiar with when it goes on in Central America is going to happen. So I will give him his due course, and I don't think that we should make any considerations on whether or not, if Greg should be the vision that we want to see for the U.S. until we get a full qualifying season in, and if he makes it, then we'll have the ultimate test come around in 2022. So that's a long way off. There's a long road to get there. But I think that tonight, maybe we can look back in 2 years or a year and say, after we've got a full World Cup qualifying season in, and say, that was a pretty substandard, sort of beginning to an amazing journey. So I hope we'll be able to look back and say, so we'll see.
Yeah, what's that quote? The longest journey begins with the first step. And these are, first steps in the Berhalter era. I appreciate your time here with me today. Thanks for letting me kind of give my ideas about this and confirm or deny them as well. And I really do appreciate your insight as someone who covers the game on a very in-person basis. And in fact, if I recall, you have a game to get to tonight, right?
I'm actually in the booth right now,
There he is.
overlooking the pitch. So, yes, I am very much in it. So I appreciate you having me on and letting me talk about it. I love the game, and I love the American game. So I'm going to be riding that Daryl DK train all the way to Qatar.
Where can we find your work and follow you?
Yeah, definitely. Look me up on Twitter. I think that's the best place and where I'm most active. It's just ZBERLY, Z Berly. Just type that in and you'll find me, or type in Zach Berly. I'm pretty sure I'm the only one.
And again, you can hear him call the Campbell University soccer matches. They've got the women's match tonight. So good luck with that call. And again, thank you so much for being on with me on Soccer for Us.
Thank you, and good luck to yourself.
Well, the USMNT played on January 31, and then less than 24 hours later, the European transfer window closed for the winter. And actually, the match had quite a vital influence for one particular player move. We'll get to that in a second, but to help me break down transfer deadline day for the United States men's national team, please welcome to Soccer for Us, Sydney Hunte. He is a soccer writer who contributes to many probably outlets that you've read, MLS, Dirty South Soccer, to name just a few. He also has his own site for U.S. men's and women's national team news, and he's also a member of Football Writers Association of America. He's a very well-rounded sports writer, and I'm very excited to have him on this show to help break down all the craziness that happens at transfer deadline. Sydney, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, I'm a jack of all trades, but master of very few. But thanks for having me on, Bart. Congrats on the podcast as well.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you can help me kick this off in only our second episode. And don't sell yourself short. You're a pretty good master of all football writing.
glad you think that, but I appreciate it. I'll send you the check after the show.
Yeah. Now, before we get really started about transfer deadline day, I want to talk about, a 7-0 win for the United States over Trinidad. I get it. It's a really bad Trinidad team for a number of reasons that are both in their control and out of their control. But hey, look, you beat a team 7-0, and it's really hard to not be positive about that. What were your initial takeaways from the game on Sunday?
Yeah, I think I remember. I mean, we talked about Trinidad, and you kind of alluded to it, a lot of issues they've had, not the least being the overall fitness levels, right? But I think John Strong during the halftime mentioned something like it was the largest lead in U.S. men's national team history, or something like that. And along with that, if they were to score an eighth goal, it was probably the largest margin of victory by a U.S. men's national team in the match. So really not something we're used to with this group. I mean, even with a program like Trinidad and Tobago at this point in time. But you got to beat everyone you can, right? And if you were to lose to Trinidad on Sunday, it wouldn't really reflect well. I mean, not that we've lost to Trinidad before, but if we were to lose to the group that was fielded on Sunday, I mean, it wouldn't really reflect well on the program in its current form. I mean, we can go on and on about cool stuff like that. But the team did what it had to do with a young group. I know we've talked about Sam Vines, talked about Jesus Ferreira, we've talked about the host of other players who really shone. And like I said, they did what they had to do against a program that they should have had no trouble beating in the first place. And they did, and did so quite handily.
Yeah, I mean, look, last year at this time, I mean, almost about 365 days ago, we beat Costa Rica 1-0 in a very, very similar friendly. It does feel like the program has progressed since then. And maybe the break actually helped Berhalter scout. Maybe he helped him, communicate more with the players he had in mind. But overall, for me personally, I think I look at a 7-0 win, as you did, as this is it's good you beat the team 7-0 because you probably should have beat them by a large margin anyway. So doing the thing you're supposed to do, in my book, is a positive.
No, I agree. I mean, it's like college football, right? It's like the FBS team against an FCS team. You got to beat the FCS teams. If people are to take you seriously. But I mean, you brought up the Costa Rica example from last year. I saw someone on Twitter bring up Martinique in the Gold Cup, events like that. Now, if this program is to really take that next step forward and prove that the ghosts of the past are kind of in the rearview mirror, these are matches that they have to win. I mean, obviously the cynic will say, look, let's match up against a team that will actually give us a battle, like maybe in Mexico or maybe a Costa Rica, a bit of a stronger program than Trinidad at this point in time. But at the same time, I mean, with this young group of players, getting that win, getting that comfortable margin, it gives them confidence going into, I'm sure we'll talk about a little later on, but gives them confidence going into this Olympic qualifier tournament, which the U.S. U23s haven't qualified for in some time.
Yeah, well, that's kind of my next question, is just where do you feel this sets us up for Olympic qualifiers in March? I mean, this team that, the roster itself was pretty heavily in that U23 age group, and the starting lineup was, pretty heavily U23, and then even the subs made that even more so. Just looking at the U23 group, what's your confidence level going into the March qualifiers?
Yeah, I mean, this is a group that, when you look at it, there's no Pulisic there, there's no Sargent, there's no Stefan, guys in that, there's no McKinney, guys in that. I mean, with Pulisic, it seems like he should be older than 23 because he's been part of the program for a while, forever. But I mean, even with that group that we saw on Sunday, it's missing that those core players that have really, made people think that maybe this is a golden generation for the USA. I mean, I was looking at the draw for the pre-Olympic qualifier, and of course, the U.S. are in the same group as Mexico. But I mean, even with that aside, it's going to be, I mean, even with the players in this pool, like I just mentioned, Pulisic, Stefan, McKinney, Sargent, guys like that, it's going to be very difficult for this team, as it is right now, to not qualify for the Olympics. And I think if they don't, I mean, serious questions need to be asked.
Yeah.
Again, looking at the draw, Mexico being in the same group as them, obviously. I mean, it's hard. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but it's hard not to see the U.S. advancing out of that particular group of 4 teams.
Right.
Now, once we get to the semifinals where the top 2 teams automatically qualify for Tokyo, that's a different discussion. But I mean, looking at that, I mean, when you look at the players that I've mentioned and the players that are on the field on Sunday, if you kind of meld those together, it's going to be very difficult for this group to not qualify for Tokyo.
Yeah, I think for me personally, I look at it and say that who knows if Pulisic, McKinney, Adams, those guys, McKenzie, Sargent, like who knows if those guys will even be released by their clubs, because it does fall, kind of outside of a FIFA window. But you look at what happened and the group that, Berhalter assembled for the match on Sunday and the roster that he called in before that, that's a pretty strong roster of guys, all guys who play regularly in MLS. And, I think that from what we've seen from past iterations of the Olympic team, that's a huge improvement. But moving on from that, we can talk. I mean, there's plenty of time to talk about Olympic qualifiers. I want to talk really quickly about 2 very specific players that I know you personally have covered and watched grow. And the first one is Miles Robinson. He gets his first start for the men's national team and gets his first international goal. Kind of hard to evaluate him from a defensive standpoint, but what was your overall impression of Robinson against Trinidad?
Yeah, I'd say I would say first and many goals, but I mean he's a center back, so
Yeah.
I don't expect that every time out, and nor should anyone. But I mean you brought up a good point. I mean Trinidad were shambles in the back pretty much the entire night. Um, the set piece that he scored on, sent from Acosta from the right side, long finds Robson with the header, and Robson connect on the diving header to up the scoring. I mean, defensively, I mean, you brought it up. He didn't have too much work to do. I mean, the 7-0 win. I mean, I think in that case, if your center back is noticed in matches like that, it doesn't bode well because you're pointing out things that he's doing wrong rather than things he's doing right. And obviously, there's some intricacies with those center backs, how they win duels, how they distribute the ball, things of that particular nature.
Yeah.
But I think he was good. He was very solid. No major mistakes that I noticed on his part. You brought it up earlier today in your piece for Soccer Down Here. He did have a dip of form, or dip in form with Atlanta United in 2020, but he really came into his own later in the season. But this is a guy that has really proven himself in MLS. It's another player that LA United has drafted well. That front office has identified that talent, and he's shown well, like I said, in the domestic level. Now he's starting to make a strong case for himself to make an impact at the international level, which is exciting.
Yeah, I think if anything, he proved that he can definitely be a starter at the U23 level. And my personal notes that I had for him up until the goal, I only had two things. And one was he didn't pass the ball to the other team. And and then he had a nice little Techers moment where he kind of Ronaldinho'd a guy, an attacker from Trinidad, and just kind of got by him. He actually got clipped and fouled, got right back up and completed a pass. So to your point, it wasn't like he had to do a lot defensively, but yeah, he wasn't noticed for anything bad. I mean, he kept possession. He did well in that. And then the second Atlanta United guy who gets on the field for the United States, mind you, George Bello, the 18-year-old left back, he comes in to replace Sam Vines, who I felt had a fantastic game. But Bello, I mean, he didn't really have a lot to do, to be quite honest. He was involved in the attack. He tried to be anyway. Is this the first of many senior national team spots for Bello, or is this just a kind of a result of the circumstances around this type of January friendly?
I mean, I'm kind of leaning toward the latter, and that's no disrespect to George. I mean, he's really grown, and he's really been that keystone part of the LA United homegrown program, which I've had a chance to watch him, with Atlanta United too, in the USL Championship, and then progress to Atlanta United, the top flight. I think the biggest thing with him, and I think that really hindered his development, is obviously injuries. The kid couldn't stay off the injury list, right? Early on in his career. Hopefully, he's put that behind him, and I don't know if he can be I mean, I don't want to say he won't be a part of the senior national team picture going forward, but I mean, if he can make a strong case for himself, I mean, we've not seen him too much in this situation,
right?
But if he can make a strong case for himself moving forward with the opportunities that he does get, I think he could have a place. I mean, we'll see what happens. We'll see, obviously, how his health dictates things. But, I mean, like you say, he didn't have too much to do as a substitute coming in on Sunday. So, I mean, we'll see what happens with him. We'll see, first and foremost, obviously, his health. But, we'll see what happens, this year and then moving forward with him.
Yeah, I think I've said on Soccer Down Here when I've gone on there that, Bello is not you can't look at George Bello as the guy for the U.S. men's national team right now. He's 18, right? That's not fair to put him into that conversation right now. I'm hoping that he gets time with the Olympic team because he probably would have got time with the U20 team this year had, the U20 World Cup not been canceled. So this is his time. This is the natural progression for an 18-year-old left back who still plays in MLS. You go hopefully get some starts at the youth national level. So U17, he showed out pretty well. Doesn't get the U20 chance this year. Hopefully gets the U23 chance in March and maybe even August for the full Olympic tournament. And that's all I can ask for George Bello, is to just keep his head down, keep working, and let the natural progression take off. I will say that, this kind of start and possible, inclusion in the Olympic team, if you're Atlanta United, probably increases his transfer value a little bit. Would you agree with that?
No, I agree. I mean, he's no Alphonso Davies.
No.
But very few people are. But yeah, I think this won't hurt his value at all if Atlanta United are approached by. I mean, they already have been approached by teams at least looking at him, looking to make a move with him. I think with a solid showing this MLS season, if we do have one, which is still up in the air.
I think we'll have one.
Well, I mean, we'll see. I'm kind of leaning in that direction too. But I think if he does perform well in MLS, he does put another solid half year in, who knows? And let's say he does get called up to at least the qualifying roster, or maybe even the Olympic roster, and he does make a strong case for himself in Japan. It's going to be very tough for clubs overseas. Maybe not a major club, but maybe a mid-table club, maybe something like that, to say, hey, this is a kid that we can really bring in and make a difference for our club. So again, we'll see what happens. Again, his health is a major issue, but hopefully he's put that behind him.
Well, okay, let's hope that Bello does, I think we're looking at Bello as being transferred from Atlanta United in the next couple of years. But let's talk about some transfers that happened, at deadline day. Especially, two guys who played in the match on Sunday for the United States end up going to England. Well, I guess Britain. One goes to Wales. But we'll start there and just talk about, Morris and Areola go to Swansea City. Areola literally right at the deadline getting that transfer done. And then Daryl DK goes to Barnsley. But all of these are loans. What's your initial thought about, first off, Morris and Areola going to Swansea?
Yeah, I think it's a move that Swansea had made for both of those players. Right now they're in promotion. They're up to being promoted. They're 5 points behind first place. They're in second place right now at last check of the championship. So it's a move they had to make to get some reinforcements to make that final push toward promotion back to the Premier League. So it makes sense for both players and for the club as well. If they can, again, make that final push or hold steady in second and put themselves or keep themselves in promotion territory. Mm-hmm. I think from you kind of mentioned this, I know you feel that there will be an MLS season. I think it makes sense for Areola to make that move because you don't want to be sitting around doing nothing.
Right.
If the MLS season does get delayed. So getting him overseas with Morris, someone he knows very well, obviously, with the national team, get him overseas with a club where he can get some matches under his belt. And let's say, there's a season that starts late. They can just bring him back whenever they feel with that loan recall in place. So, like I said, it's a move that makes sense for both player and club at this point.
Well, and then the other one that, took me by surprise, honestly, and not saying he's a good player, but I did not expect this, but Daryl DK goes on loan to Barnsley. I don't know if that surprised you, but it certainly kind of came out of nowhere for me.
No, I tweeted this out. His inner circle did a really good job of not leaking that.
Yeah.
Normally see these moves leaked hours before they happen, but
even something of hey, he's getting interest, right? That we never even saw that.
Exactly. But no, like you said, it came out of nowhere. And no one expected him to be loaned overseas. Barnsley, mid-table championship, really no chance of being promoted or relegated either way. But at the same time, I think it makes better sense for DK at this point because of the reason I mentioned for Areola, right? You don't want to, be doing nothing, in case the MLS season is delayed.
Yeah.
But at the same time, DK being a younger player, well within that U23 window for the United States, with the Olympic qualifiers coming up, you want to get him some seasoning in the off season, or the MLS off season, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
You want to get him some seasoning, some playing time overseas. So, yeah, getting him over to Barnsley, getting him some time over there, and getting him ready if and when the MLS season commences. And obviously, of course, with the U23 or the Olympic pre-qualifier going on right as well, you want him fresh just in case, Jason Christ does identify him as a player that could have a place on that final roster.
Well, Barnsley currently sit 12th in the English Championship. They've got 36 points, so they're right in the mid-table, but they have some room to improve. Maybe DK can do that for them. Two other guys who made some moves within the championship. First, Sebastian Soto goes back to Norwich City. Nothing really surprising there. He gets recalled from his loan to Telstar because he finally can get the UK work permit. And then Dwayne Holmes goes back to Huddersfield Town from Derby County. He clearly wasn't within, new manager Wayne Rooney's plans. He goes to Huddersfield Town. So now we have, a lot of players, a lot of American players in the championship. I think the championship is a little bit of an improved quality from MLS, but overall, just happy to see the guys with a little, they're in Europe. They have more eyes on them now. I don't know if you have anything to say about the fact that we have 7 guys now in the championship, it feels like. So, but it's good, in my opinion. I think it's good.
No, I agree. Playing time can't hurt. Especially with younger guys like Soto, kind of maybe on that fringe of the national team picture. It doesn't hurt to have him in the position where he's getting some seasoning, especially if he wants to make a impact or wants to get right into that national team picture. Not so much the senior team at this time, but definitely the U23. Holmes, I kind of forgot about him.
I love playing Holmes, but yeah, I get it.
Yeah, been a while since we've heard from him. Georgia guy, obviously, but two appearances with the national team since 2019. So yeah, I suppose with him, it's good that he's still kind of plugging away and now head to Huddersfield Town.
Well, we'll leave the Isles and head to the continent and talk about probably the big news for the United States men's national team player pool on the day. Brian Reynolds goes on loan to AS Roma, but there's a very lucrative option to buy at €6,750,000, and then some $5 million in potential add-ons. But Reynolds going to Roma, he now will be the second American in Serie A right now. I'm still kind of shocked that a guy who has not even 20 appearances in MLS is getting this type of attention from. Roma's a pretty legit European club. They're a big time club. Did that surprise you that it's Roma? It almost could have been Juve. This is a shocking revelation for me, and it's really cool to be a part of.
Yeah, I think it speaks to it really speaks to the job that the SC Dallas Academy has done, because you mentioned McKinney over there in Juve, Reynolds, of course, Ferreira, Tessman, who played, Acosta, who played on Sunday. They just continue to crank out terrific talent. I think it speaks to the promise that Brian Reynolds has that really caused Roma to make that move. I think they did see, they did take some notes from McKinney moving from Schalke to Juventus that kind of informed them into making this particular move. But that's €6.75 million. That's a big number, and again, I believe he's going to be signing a contract with. I believe I saw 2023 or something like that. I'll have to pull it up. But, they have obviously tremendous faith in what he can do. If they didn't, they wouldn't have made investment in him like they did. He's going to be signing with them through 2025. I mean, that's a long way away.
Yeah.
That's obviously a long way away. But I don't know how much time he'll see right away.
Right.
But I don't know if he doesn't get loaned out to the reserves or somewhere else to get him some playing time or something like that. But again, it speaks to the promise that Roma feels Brian Reynolds has.
Well, I mean, look, he's 18, so 19. There's a lot of room for improvement and growth. And you saw the potential last season in MLS. And, I think that if you're Roma, you just see this as an investment opportunity. And, if you're Dallas, it's just worst case scenario, you can get him back. I think it's actually great for Reynolds. And like you said, he may not start right away at Roma. He may get loaned out from somewhere at Roma. It just depends. But I think for him to go to Europe now at 19 can be really beneficial to his career. And another guy who made, I think, a really beneficial move for his career, DeAndre Yedlin moves from Newcastle to Galatasaray. He hadn't really been in the future plans for Newcastle. He had been used a little bit this season, but not like, you could tell he wasn't part of whatever they were trying to do. Now he goes to Galatasaray. They're a Champions League club, right? Like that's that you can't take that away from DeAndre Yedlin. Do you think this is a signal that maybe he can finally start, turning his career around?
Yeah, I mean, you brought it up. I mean, looks like he just fell at Steve Bruce's plans at Newcastle. And,
does Steve Bruce have plans?
You have to ask Miguel and Miron that.
Yeah.
But like you said, he just kind of fell out of the picture with them, and he was on the last year of his contract, so it looks like he was able to secure a move to Galatasaray on a free, which benefits both Newcastle and Galatasaray. Yeah. But like you said, Galatasaray as a Champions League club, probably the biggest club in Turkey, and we'll see what happens. I mean, he was a regular at Newcastle a few years ago before that kind of playing time diminished to what it is now. The hope is that he can kind of, like you said, spark his career at a new setting, a new bit of scenery for him in Turkey, with a club that really has a record of success. Where he'll fit in, obviously, remains to be seen with their manager, but I think this could be a fresh start for him, a way for him to get back on the radar.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense for him. I know Turkey seems like far, far away, but, hey, we found a guy in Turkey that we trotted out in 2019, and Tyler Boyd actually goes on loan from Besiktas to Sivasspor. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm sorry to anyone who speaks Turkish for butchering that. But, yeah, I mean, I think Turkey, the level of play in Turkey has kind of fallen off since the mid 2000s, but it's still, they still get Champions League berths. They still are a very competitive professional league. So having two guys there, maybe they find their way to, more playing time. And I think that would be good. A couple other just kind of notes. Matthew Hoppe gets his extension at Schalke through 2023. And that's good for whether they go down to 2 Bundesliga or stay up in Bundesliga 1. And then Brendan Aronson goes to Salzburg, which kind of knew that happened a way long time ago, but just want to mention it. Any other moves that I didn't mention that you kind of want to highlight, or things that caught your eye on deadline day?
Yeah, I got to mention Chris Richards being loaned to Hoffenheim from Bayern Munich. Hoffenheim.
And there's a buy option, right?
I don't believe it is. I think it's just a straight short-term loan. Hoffenheim, their defense has just been miserable. Losing players due to injury left and right. So this looks like it's just reinforcements for Hoffenheim. Yeah. I forget where they are in the.
They're 12th right now in the Bundesliga. They're on 22 points, so kind of not safe from relegation, but not right there.
Right. Yeah. So really tough season for
I mean,
them.
they're not
Even
Shaka.
no, exactly, exactly. But yeah, still, I mean, Hoffenheim have allowed 34 goals this season, one of the highest totals in Bundesliga. So yeah, it's just reinforcements for them as they kind of look to avoid the drop to Zweite Bundesliga. Right now, they are, like I said, mid-table, but still at the same time, they're 5 points back
Yeah.
of the relegation playoff zone. So, you know, a few wrong steps could put them in danger of dropping. So, I think, like I said, reinforcements for them in the back. It's a benefit to Richards, obviously, because
Mhm.
he'll be able to continue to get some playing time with a club that do need help down the stretch. So, it's very beneficial to him, as well as how things look for him. With this Olympic qualifier coming
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, he's in that Olympic age group. He is in that U23 designation. So it could mean that he just gets qualified. He might not be able to go to qualifying because he'll be playing for Hoffenheim, or maybe he does. We'll see how that plays out. Two moves that I want to ask. They didn't happen. Aaron Long does not go to Liverpool. I think everyone is not shocked, but there were clubs apparently interested in Aaron Long. Do you like? I see Aaron Long as a very, very good MLS center back. He clearly has won, Greg Berhalter over and is pretty much a locked-in starter at that position. Are you concerned he hasn't made a move to Europe? Do you think he needs to?
Not really. At this point, I think sooner or later he will. It certainly looks like it. Obviously, it won't happen in this window because it's long since gone. But I think no, I was reading in The Athletic on Monday. We recorded this on Tuesday, so I was reading on Monday, and they're mentioning New York Red Bulls with a new manager, Gerhard Stuber, coming in. They want that veteran presence on the team to kind of tie things over from the Chris Armas era to the incoming Gerhard Stuber era. So if you want to have him in place, at least for now, to kind of bridge that gap, I think I agree with that. That's the motivation for Red Bulls to keep him on board for now. I mean, obviously, it could be that down the road he gets sent to Salzburg or
that's true.
There are other clubs in Europe. But I mean, I think a move for him, while not, I don't know if it will happen in the summer or anything like that, but I do think a move for him might be around the corner. I don't know if he's the quality to play at Liverpool, which is a club that really came out of nowhere that he's apparently linked to. But I mean, no disrespect to him, but I mean, this just seems kind of far fetched. But like I said, I think Europe will come calling more and more, and I think that he is headed there sooner or later. Obviously not now, but I think a move is on the horizon for him. It's just a matter of when, and I would say maybe the winter transfer window coming up, toward the end of the year is when I would really expect him to make the move to Europe.
Well, Sydney, thank you so much for your updates on all this transfer deadline day news. I appreciate you filling us in and giving some context to what actually happened and why moves were made and what they mean. Thank you again also for just being a guest here on the Soccer for Us pod. Excited for you to help grow my audience and help contribute to what I'm trying to do here. Where can we find your work and follow you?
Yeah, so my newsletter, Soccer American Style, is at ussoccer.substack.com. So you all can go there and subscribe and get my updates when they come out. Or you can follow the newsletter's Twitter account on Twitter at SoccerAMStyle. And then my personal Twitter account is SHWrites, where I'll tweet about soccer, American football, sports, anything else on my mind. So those are the ways to follow me.
Yeah, you're very busy in the writing era, but I have enjoyed your Soccer American style newsletter. So go ahead and subscribe to that, everyone. Again, it's ussoccer.substack.com. So give Sydney a follow. And again, thank you so much for being on, and I hope to talk with you in the future.
Awesome, Bart. Thanks for having me. Take care.
All right. Thank you to both Zach and Sydney for joining me on this episode of Soccer for Us. Before we get out of here, I do want to hit one piece of news. The United States women's national team on February 1st announced their roster for the She Believes Cup. 23 players on the roster. 3 training players will be there in Florida to train with the team. They won't play. They won't be able to make a match day roster, but they can come train with the team. I won't go through that player by player because I will be doing that next month. So please stay tuned for that as we preview the U.S. Women and the She Believes Cup against Canada, Brazil, and Argentina. But I will just point out that I'm really hoping that Casey Murphy from North Carolina, and formerly of OL Reign and formerly of Montpellier in France, former Ligue 1 Féminin Keeper of the Year. I'm excited to see if she gets some playing time because I think that as a 25-year-old, she could be the future U.S. women's goalkeeper. But again, stay tuned next month as we go over and preview the She Believes Cup, and then we'll also have an episode reviewing all the action. We won't do game by game, but we'll just look at it in totality. That is what's coming up next. Again, thank you so much to Zach Berly. Follow him on Twitter at ZBurley, and to Sydney Hunte. Follow him on Twitter at SHWrites. That's rights as in a paper, not whatever. You get what I'm saying. That will be in the show notes as well, so give them a follow and subscribe to Sydney's newsletter on Substack. It's actually really informative, and I really enjoy his takes on soccer in the United States. So, again, thank you so much to those guys for being on here. Thank you, listeners, for paying attention to me for this entire time. I hope you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe and follow us on Twitter at SoccerForUsPod. I'm Bart Keeler. I'm out.